Hello and welcome to Reveal's 2021 Masterclass webinar series, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Kelly and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar, Why an Agile Supply Chain is More Important Than a What are the top 5 things we can do now in SAP that will make us an agile supply chain? And over the course of the year, our Masterclass webinar series focuses on supply chain and operational excellence in the new normal. You are all probably asking yourself, well, what is the new normal? We are presenting on 4 topics that will help you establish this for your organization. After today, the next webinar will take place in August and the last in this series in November. As we get started with today's discussion, the webinar is going to last approximately 30 to 45 minutes, followed by a question and answer period at the end. So please capture your questions in the question or chat section during the presentation. And feel free to raise your hand to be called on during the question and answer period at the end of the presentation. Christy has also incorporated some polls during her presentation we will be walking you through. And at this time, I would like to introduce you today to our speaker, Christy Bain. Christy is an advisor with Reveal with over 20 years of practical integrated supply chain management experience across a variety of industries from fashion, retail, and entertainment to consumer packaged goods, manufacturing, and automotive accessories. She specializes in organizational change management, decision support solution, and integrated business planning processes for supply chains of all shapes and sizes. With that, Christy, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Great, thank you so much, Kelly. Hi, everyone. So first of all, genuine thanks for tuning in today. We're so excited to have you and have a great conversation about 5 things that we can do in SAP today to help us on our journey to operating an agile supply chain. So as we're going through today, those 5 tips or tricks are going to be encapsulated in the following topics. The first we're going to focus on is around exception management and monitoring. So how does that take us from more reactive or reacting to more proactive management in the supply chain? The second is to discuss how we can build agility by speeding the flow of relevant information across the supply chain. And this is an area of particular passion and interest for me, so I'm looking forward to talking a little more about this with you. And then lastly, we're going to explore the connection between master data and realistic plans that are actionable. Sometimes it's hard to get excited about master data, and today I want to give you some good reasons to get enthusiastic and energized and get in and start really working through some of your master data challenges. And then we'll wrap up with a quick review of the 5 ways that we can start our journey to getting an agile supply chain through working with SAP. So as Kelly said, as we go through today, we're going to have a number of poll questions. These are to encourage discussion and conversation. It also helps me know, as we're going through today, maybe where I should focus based on the makeup of the folks that are on the call. So throughout the presentation, we'll take a few opportunities to just kind of pulse check and get some more feedback on where we are in terms of makeup on our journey. So first of all, I wanted to just compare and contrast resiliency versus agility. So when we are resilient, we have the ability to rebound. We are able to return despite challenges and struggles. Much like this woman in the photo, she is holding on, she is holding tight, and when the wind stops blowing, she's going to be able to stand up and move along. Versus agility. And in this case, agility is our ability to not only stand back up and move forward, but also be opportunistic and agile in the way that we are able to do that. So rather than the admirable quality of being able to stand up and withstand the punch, being agile means we're able to continue to move in that fight. So I wanted to compare and contrast the 2 before we get started and talk about the difference between being able to stay strong and stable versus being able to even continue that further and to be opportunistic and pivot with the changes in our business conditions and challenges. So with that said, Kelly, I'd love to do our first poll. I'd like to give an idea of where everyone is.
Okay, I went ahead and launched that. If everybody could go ahead and submit your responses. Do you think Do you think of your supply chain as stable, resilient, agile, or at risk?
And I wish we had the ability in the polls to ask follow-up questions, because then I would ask how that compares to maybe 24 months ago or 12 months ago, because we know that right now we're all going through some pretty unique challenges.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll, and we're gonna check out those statistics here.
Right?
Sharing our results. Christy, can you see those results up?
I cannot see them, no.
Okay, well, we have 40% say that they are stable. We have 13% at resilient, 13% agile, and 33% at risk.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that, guys. And it sounds like we were very, very honest in our rating of ourselves too, as we thought through that. And I'd say, you're in really good company. It's definitely a challenge to be able to move through resilient and into agile. If we're stable right now, I think a lot of us feel pretty grateful to be in that position. But let's talk about some things maybe we can do within the SAP solution to help us to get better. So Kelly, I just want to make sure you're able to see my screen advancing, okay?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect. So, let's start a little bit around the challenge. So we often talk to people around, what are some of the reasons, what gets in the way of being able to take advantage of all of the options and the opportunities within the technology platform. So, it's people and process first, but then it's the enablement through that smart use of technology that allows us to really be able to knock it out of the park, right? We have to have the right tools for the job, know how to use them really well in order to be able to execute the strategies. Otherwise, it's a lot of really, really hard work. It's effective, but it's not necessarily efficient, and we're limited in terms of transparency and visibility. So, if you're looking at some of the quotes on the screen here, these are direct quotes over the course of the summer last year, and discussing with different businesses what some of their struggles were. And, a lot of it is around the limitation of you don't know what you don't know. And it's hard if you don't have the time and the guidance to be able to figure out what things are available to you and how to move through that path of knowledge. There's also, there's some fear, I think, as well, when we think about things that are efficiency builders, automation, visibility, and transparency. You start to talk about visibility and transparency, and while that's a wonderful thing for gaining alignment and cross-functional integration, it's also scary for some folks if they're not at the point where they're ready for everybody to kind of, see their work as it's happening. So there's a little bit of that as well, where we just kind of lack the confidence in order to be able to move forward. But if any of these resonate with you, I will tell you these are incredibly common responses and reactions in terms of when we start to think about the technology enablement piece of things. So we may be strong as a supply chain organization. We may have great ideas and great strategies and really hard workers and folks who are able to operationally execute, but without that backbone of the system to help us, it can be really challenging nonetheless. So the first thing I want to chat about is exception monitoring. If you think about exception monitoring, you're not quite sure what that is. If you think about going out and driving your car, it's the alert system that you're going to see on your dashboard. And there's a multitude of information available to you. And some of them, you know right away what they mean. So for my folks who are doing this today, if I said, exception message group 7, so you probably know what those are. Those are the first ones that we learn about. And that's being able to align our dates and quantities together. So it's our move-ins and our move-outs and our cancel messages. You get a little bit further along and you start to understand the intricacies of the different exception messages that are available to you. So I'll give you an example. I was out driving the other day and I had a big square show up on my dashboard and I was like, I have no idea what that means. So I had to dig out the owner's manual. It's not one I'd seen before. Turns out my sunroof was cracked just a little bit, which makes sense because it's springtime, the weather's starting to get nice and I'm driving around with it open. So I went through and I closed that, but it clicked for me. So I was like, man, now I'll know, but if I hadn't had a reason to look, I might not have realized. And it's the same thing with discovering all the things that are available to us in terms of tips and tricks and tools in our technology platform. So exception monitoring is really powerful, and the most conventional way to think about that in SAP is through the actual exception monitor. So up here on the left-hand side, this is an example of an organization that is likely in that kind of surviving mode. So maybe at risk, maybe stable, maybe starting to bleed a little bit into resilience. So we're getting the work done, but it's really, really hard. And I can tell that because I can see that we've got just tons of exception messages. So if we look here, as you go across, the exception message numbers, you'll see those on the first two columns, then the description, and then on the right-hand side is the count. And in this case, we have a bunch of them that say 99. And the trick with that is that when we see 99s, that means SAP has stopped counting. So this is a good example of an exception monitor that's showing that we are not actively managing this, which means that we may be actively managing our supply chain, but we are definitely not doing that in SAP. So here's an example of one that is quite a lot better. So, and a little bit more information. So this is maybe an organization that is thriving. So is resilient, maybe even starting to move to Agile. The number of messages that we're seeing are much smaller, they're manageable, they're things that we can get through on a day-to-day basis. And our red, yellow, and green lights are telling us information about what our stock status is. And we may have more green than red. We're working on inventory rather than degradation of service. So this is a great tool to give us kind of just an overall health check on how it is that we're doing. And with this, there is a method to the madness of how we review this. So what it overall is an indicator of how our plan, our schedules, and our actuals are coming together. And the better that integration, so if I have a plan in my mind for lunch today and Kelly's taking care of the schedule and then the DoorDash guy comes and all three of us are not on the same page, we're going to have some hungry folks, which means we probably have some mad folks. So the closer that we can align the plan, the schedule, and the actual, the more efficient and effective we are in managing the supply chain throughout our organization. We think about it, the hardest thing about working in supply chain is the integration. And it's also the best thing because it allows us to harness lots of good qualitative inputs from lots of different people. So the two main reasons out of the four that we're going to focus on today for getting exceptions are our incorrect rules, which is our master data, and our behavior, which does not match the rules that we have in the system. Think about SAP as a rules engine and MRP being at the core of that. We really want those things to align in order to be effective. So this isn't the only way to monitor, though, for exceptions. And a lot of this that I'm about to show, you're probably also real familiar with. So these are things like the list displays that are available to us, capacity evaluation monitoring to let us know which work centers, as we look out across time, may be over or under capacity. We think about being agile and opportunistic. That shows us where our opportunities lie. It allows us to see things like how efficient we are. What do we have in terms of maybe goods receipt and goods issue balances? How are we looking from an invoicing perspective? Are our lead times correct? So you're looking at this, you probably are using a lot of these tools today. And the challenge then is to think about how we use these as a tool set in order to be able to improve the quality of information flow across our processes and people. But SAP is giving us a ton of diagnostics all the time. We just need to have the ability to get in and start to use that information. So starting to explore this is one of the things that we can do in order to push a little further along. And here's just some other examples of exception monitors. So this one here helps us to understand if we're having any issues with our forecasts. Are we over or under? Which customers are consuming that forecast? How is it looking as we go throughout the course of the month? This is our sales orders. So which sales orders are cleared for takeoff and can go out the door? They've had all of their checks done. There's no issues with credit. Everything is available and we're expecting it to be. There's no issues with being past the goods issue date. So all those ahead or behind conditions are clear. And then down here is capacity analysis, and this lets us know where we are over or under capacity. In this case, it's all red. So we've selected a work center here that's having some problems. And then lastly, this is warehouse. So this is just to give you a sense that if you think about all the functions in your supply chain, there are tools that can help with each and every piece of that. And that's really where the opportunity lies, is being able to put these tools into good use. Power is in the information. So how do we do? What can we do right now? It's, first of all, we want to exploit the tools to find our opportunities. So we've got the full diagnostic suite. We want to remember that our system is based off of the rules that we put into it. So in order to get that engine to run nicely, we've got to give it the right information. And then we have to know that SAP is constantly communicating with us. If you feel like, oh my gosh, it's communicating way too much right now because I have too many exceptions and I don't know how to get through them, there's ways of handling that in terms of grouping and prioritization in order to be able to get through. And we're really in the driver's seat of making this happen. So in order to operate an agile supply chain, we have to become proactive and light on our feet and working from one single source of truth. And this brings me to the second part of our conversation today, which is learning how we build agility by speeding the flow of information from one group to another across the supply chain. And even the end-to-end supply chain as we think about our customers and our suppliers so that they're able to be more effective and efficient. And I don't know if this resonates for anyone, but these are the types of conversations that go on. We've got everybody kind of working at their own desk, working on their own thing, trying to get answers, and we just see the ball and the baton getting passed back and forth to try to get that information. And another way that this can manifest is when we end up in a situation like this. So this is what we call harmonized work disrupted. So we've got this really great plan, but the plan is just not going all the way through to execution as we would expect it would. We're not really sure how to get the value that we're looking for out of the system to help us with that planning. It's something's just not right, but we're not sure where. So we all end up using Excel sheets. And then somebody takes it from Excel into Access, and then eventually from Access into SQL, and all of a sudden we're trying to replace our technology platform because we're just not sure what to do or how to get that working for us. We come to the conclusion that it just doesn't work. The problem with this is that you've got a whole lot of folks who are all looking in different areas, so you don't have that single source of truth, and that's what allows us to go from information into intelligence, and intelligence into decision making. And if you're out and everybody's using a different piece of information, you're really back at the stage of just data gathering, and we really want to take that and make it into more. So we have a polling question here, second of the day. Kelly, if you wouldn't mind launching that for me.
Okay, our next question is, how harmonized are your activities and operations? So we'll go ahead and give you a few minutes or a few seconds to get the answered.
And I always think this image really resonates with me. I feel like I've been this gal before. In previous life, particularly, I was running an antifreeze plant, and I remember there's one day in particular where I felt like I was literally this woman just kind of sitting on the floor going, man, oh man, I know we've got a problem here, and it's really hard for me to be able to pick out exactly what's happening.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and share the results. And our results are 13%. We have our own plans, and there are a lot of disagreements. 75%, everyone knows the basic information, but we are not in sync. And 13%, we have great integration, and we're working well in harmony.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you very much for that response. So I can tell from those responses that you already value the flow of information. So we think about materials and supply chain, it's all about flow. And when we have effective and efficient flow of information, this enables us to have the effective flow of material, which allows us to manage the supply chain. So if we think about all the integration that happens, from end to end, from customer to supplier, and all the stops in between, the closer we are to that information, the better we're able to flow through and make decisions. So, and that is the purpose of having a single source of truth. So eliminating the need to plan outside the system and focusing our time and energy on bringing things in so that we can sit down and have a conversation about our plan and everybody's looking at the same numbers. I hate that game, the numbers, who's got the number? I've got a number, you've got a number. Yeah. So this is one of the ways that we can help with that. And if we think about, all of the different steps or stages, as we're going through this and we're moving, inventory around, we have shortage situations, we have overages, we've got inventory that's stuck in the wrong place, being able to all look to the same data set, the same single source of truth, to be able to then form an opinion and make a decision is just huge. And the chances of us being aligned and integrated in those decisions is so much better when we're all working from the same system. And the most important part is that we're managing that effective and efficient flow of information by providing relevant information to what it is that we're trying to do. Okay. So here's just a simple end-to-end supply chain diagram. And what I really wanted to highlight here again is the alignment of plan and schedule and actual. So, we may be planning out at the 12, 18-month horizon, 3-year, 5-year horizon. But then we're actually getting in and we're scheduling in that midterm horizon, and we're actually executing in the short-term horizon. So as we think about the relevant ranges for those plans, and we know what our confidence intervals are as we get nearer to the activities that are actually happening, the better the alignment as we go through that flow, and the closer we are to operationally executing what it was that we had planned to do, the better the health and management of the supply chain. So understanding all the pieces of the puzzle and knowing what is required in terms of timing and cadence, because cadence keeps the crazy away, this allows us to have better alignment across functions. And we can see that by investigating the process integration breakdowns and exception messages that are associated with those in SAP to be able to help us figure out where we might have opportunities to improve that flow of data and information. So number 2 and 3 on what can we do right now. Number 2 is SAP must be our single source of truth. Unequivocally, we must have the right information in there for people to be able to schedule and execute to. We may have additional solutions that help us with our upfront planning, but once we hit that mid to near term horizon, we want to make sure that we're flowing all of that information into SAP, and that is the system that we are working from. So when we have those disparate paths of getting our information together, creating our plans, it's almost impossible for us to create that harmony that we're looking for, where the handoffs are clean and we know that we are passing information at the time that it's right. So if you think about up front, we were showing that tool for sales order monitoring, and I was talking about sales orders had been cleared for takeoff. Think about that as an example, right? If we're able to go in and just know that information, there doesn't have to be a phone call or a question. We're able to manage things in terms of dates and quantities and activities rather than worrying about single line items on a purchase order, or a sales order, or single planned orders. But we're able to actually just manage in terms of dates and quantities and move things through by exception. And then we have to remember, of course, the integration piece, which it sounds like based on those polling results, you're all very keyed into this, but there's very little in supply chain that we can get done by ourselves. We always need help from our friends. And so by getting that information into the single source of truth, that allows us to leverage the power of being able to work together and get all the value out of that human capital. So, conversations with myself only go so far. Conversations with others are what help me to develop good solutions. And I'm sure it's the same for all of us. Okay. So our last piece here is exploring the connection between quality master data and realistic plans that are actionable. And I saved this for last because I know master data is everyone's favorite topic, and you're super excited to talk a little bit more about it right now. But it is the key. So by having the right rules in the system, so you'll see that along the bottom side here where it says business rules, there's a bunch of examples of different data pieces that have to come together. So our settings in our material master, are our bombs correct? Do we have the right information in our routings? Do I have a good customer material info record? Am I accounting for all of my lead times and the different pieces, both for the customer and for the supplier and for operations? So having all of that information in there is what allows the system to come closer to thinking about things, approaching things in the same way that we would. And that doesn't mean that it replaces anything that we would do. It just simply means that the proposals are going to be cleaner, that it gets us to a better starting point, and then it allows us to focus where we really need to be able to provide those decision points. And the other part of this is over on the left-hand side for information, ownership, and grouping and prioritization. This allows us to get quality of information so that we are able to make good decisions. And this drives us to the business outcomes that we're looking for, the supply chain outcomes, service levels, right? Inventory levels, managing that triangle of tension with customer service and inventory value and manufacturing efficiency. How can we do that better? Having the master data rules in place allows us to know what our wiggle room is, where we can be agile because we can see the playing field. All right, and so when we think about the impact of our master data on producing quality plans, our jobs are to provide quality plans that we can execute, or quality schedules that we can execute to. So as we're going through and we're receiving our demand signal, and we're figuring out what that supply plan is going to look like, or we're on the front end and we're providing the best demand signal we can, whichever case it may be. Ultimately, what we are trying to get to our partners in the form of suppliers or subcontractors or contract manufacturers, or to the manufacturing floor, is a plan that is realistic and reasonable and executable. And the way that we do it is by having the right master data in the system. So we do know what those lot sizes are supposed to be. We have the right planning strategies assigned. We know if this should be a reorder point item because it needs to be separated from the demand signal and it has a short lead time and we're running off of min-max, or if it should be, deterministic planning on demand. So we want to make sure that we have these types of things keyed up and ready to go. Our lead times are accurately reflected and we've got right bombs and routings, because that allows the system to be able to provide us with this great information that you're seeing on the screen right now. All of a sudden I've got information and intelligence so I can make decisions. I can at a glance see if I have a potential problem with any of my raw materials or components that are needed for this order. The system has flagged them for me. It is letting me know what the ripple effect is, so the upstream and downstream effect of how I'm potentially going to impact customer orders, so I can make decisions in limited supply or capacity situations on how I want to use those materials. It provides me with dates so I can properly realign. So all of these great things come directly out of managing our master data in the most effective and efficient way possible. And part of that is being able to experiment. So, folks often ask, isn't there just a quick, 10-page guide on master data for SAP? And there certainly is that kind of information for field definitions. But what we have to understand, one of my favorite things about planning in any planning system, is that there are synergies from having the right makeup of master data components. And the closer that match of those master data components to the reality of how we actually live our lives, our business behaviors, and what our customers and our suppliers need and want and we're willing to do, the better the quality of the plan, which gets us closer to having something that is realistic and reasonable and actionable, so we don't waste precious resources in terms of our human capital and labor, our capacity, or our materials. We can make the very best use of those in order to be able to meet our customers' needs. So when I think about that and I roll it into two more very important things that we can do in SAP that will help us to be more agile, the first is treating that master data really as an asset. So we want to make sure that it is our rules engine and that we think about it that way. And if we elevate our master data game, I will even go as far as saying it can be a strong competitive advantage because our people are able to focus on other things. The best thing that we have is our human capital. And if we can free up those brains to be able to focus on the things that are really value added and let this technology platform do some of the hard work for us, in terms of the things that are easy, straight up calculations, information that can be provided, data, allowing us to be able to data mine and turn that into intelligence and decision making. We should do that. That gives us to a competitive advantage. And then number 5 is really planning for success. So that's getting to that plan that we know is reasonable and realistic and executable. So Kelly, I've got one more poll question here. Would you mind launching that one for folks?
All right. How is master data viewed within your organization? So we'll give you a few seconds to go ahead and answer that. All right, a few more votes are coming in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and share the results with you. And we have the basics, but short on how to make it work together at 53%. Painful, it is centrally owned and challenging to make changes at 33%. And strong, master data is front and center in our organization at 13%.
Nice. Well, kudos to those of you who are at a place where you're recognizing that it's a challenge, and kudos to those of you who are at a place where it is front and center. And kind of playing back to that competitive advantage point, if you think about the landscape of all the fine participants we have on the call today, 13% of us feel like we have it front and center. So, the opportunity abounds to really make this into an asset that is driving and putting us in a position for agility, because this is the playbook, so to speak, that allows us to be able to get data and value out of the system. Okay, so we are at the end of our 30 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and bring us home, and then we'll have some time for some questions. So I'm going to buy you at least 2 minutes here if you're thinking of a question that you would like to ask. So how are we going to do this? What are the things that we can do today? Top 5. First of all, really exploit the tools. We forget a lot of times on what's offered, and we don't know what we don't know. But there are so many diagnostic tools available to us in SAP to drive insights on how our supply chain and how even our organization are surviving and thriving. And there's going to be good news, and there's going to be meh news, and there's going to be challenging news in there, and you want all of it so that you're able to react and respond. Even if you've got challenges, you can still drive agility, because knowing is half the battle. So if you can at least see it, then you know where to step and where you have the ability to move and groove. So, being able to know where the bottlenecks and the constraints are, you're able to work with those, address them, and work around them. Okay. The second thing is really that single source of the truth. So bringing everybody into one system, there's no debate over who has the right information. The information is there. If the information in the system is not of quality, then you have the opportunity to improve that. But really a rally around saying, this is where it starts. This is where the conversation starts from. This is what we're referring to. This is what is up on our screens in meetings that we're discussing. And if you've got Excel sheets out that are supplementing or supporting that, really start to think about, how do we bring that information into the system. The third is probably my favorite, and it's truly, we get by with a little help from our friends. So leveraging integration and cross-functional alignment to be able to help us to deliver on our promises. So as we're making a promise, we're keeping a promise, whether that's to our customers, it's to our suppliers, or it's internally just from function to function. We want to make sure that we're able to do that. And we are stronger together. More minds, more diversity of thinking, better solutions. And then what we just talked about, which I won't belabor the point, but treating our master data as an asset, because that's the entire engine that gets us started. So if we don't have that in place, it's hard for us to do all the other great things that we want to do, and it's difficult for us to be able to trust the information that we're seeing. And then lastly, plan for success. So if you know that you're submitting a plan that is wildly out of alignment with your capacity or what it is that you're able to execute, you're causing churn on the manufacturing floor, think about how you scale that back. Start in baby steps, but really start to work yourself to a place where you are understanding the cadence of activities for the folks who are upstream and downstream from you, and start to work through that alignment. Being able to do that will help us to, at least, even if things are piled up outside of the immediate planning horizon, you've got to sort through and prioritize, at least get in the execution window, get a plan or schedule that is stable and realistic and reasonable, so that the folks that are in manufacturing and in procurement are able to execute to that. It's the right thing to do for our people, it's the right thing to do for our partners, and it ensures that we're not in a place where we waste our materials or capacity, or make short on our promises to our customers. Okay. So Kelly, do we have any questions that I can answer?
We do. The first one that came in from our audience is, does HANA 1909 have additional monitors?
So once we get into S4, we do have additional opportunities for exception monitoring, absolutely. So not just the exception monitor that you are seeing here, but in terms of new Fiori tiles and Fiori apps that help us with the planning process. So yeah, we would love to do a whole session just around that, because there are lots of new tools coming that are really purpose-built for folks who work in the supply chain organization. They really have put a lot of thought into the types of things that we could use in order to be able to make things better. So yes, good question. I like that question a lot.
All right, and the next question we have from the audience is, our company is discussing auto exceptions. What would be the pro and con in doing this?
I think I would need a little more information on what we mean by auto exceptions.
Okay, so if that individual would like to supply some additional information in the chat, I can go ahead and follow up with Christy. And then the other question was, can we use T codes if we don't have Fiori with HANA 1909?
You can use T codes, and you would be using the old graphic user interface, so similar to. What you would lack is the advantage of being able to have the Fiori apps themselves, right? You'd still be able to use all the exception monitoring pieces that we were showing today in the new HANA infrastructure, but you would not have the actual Fiori apps to play with. You got to have the license for Fiori.
And to follow up with that previous question about our company is discussing auto exceptions, what would be the pros and cons? The additional information they provided is they mean that the person, no person manually doing exceptions, it would all be automated.
So you're talking about literally when MRP is recommending the reschedule dates, just allowing those to get accepted. No, I would not recommend that. There are those indications. So when we're going in and responding to an exception message, we shouldn't be thinking about it as just responding to that particular message. We should be thinking about it as resolving the planning situation overall. So while there may be some cases where we're able to accept the suggestions that SAP is putting forth, we do need to consider what the other implications are. And there's some prioritization that needs to be done there. So especially as we think about our supply base and our manufacturing, if we were to just let every single expedite or de-expedite request roll through, we probably are not spending our time and effort in the best places. So what we really want to do is we want to understand and resolve that particular planning situation, but then see if there's anything else that needs to go on, which drives us back to the master data, to see if there's any tooling or tuning that we need to do in order to be able to resolve those planning situations on an ongoing basis. So automation is a beautiful thing, but you really want to make sure that you have a deep understanding, that you've been through that process manually and you're effective and efficient at it before you consider just going ahead and letting it roll. So unless you've been through a deep optimization effort and you've got quite a bit of road under your feet, I would recommend being very cautious.
All right, and we're going to take one more question from the audience here, which is, how can I have SAP list all exception messages equal 20 and then cancel processes?
So when you are going through the exception monitor, you have the opportunity to find those exceptions. And so if you navigate to, and this is hard to explain without actually showing you, so we can talk offline, but you can go to the find and you're able to allow SAP to search for those exception messages for you. You can do it by number, you can do it by MRP element, you can even do it by things like material description, and it will go through and it will locate all of those that are relevant and pull them into one work list for you.
All right, well, thank you, Christy. And then if anyone else here in the audience, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us at the email listed here on that question and answer page.
Sorry.
And then I also want to invite you all to join us for a boot camp that we have coming up. And I also put the link to that boot camp if you'd like to register in the chat for a direct link. But this will give you and your team an opportunity to take a deep dive into SAP to help discover and apply the supply chain best practices as they are taught by our team for immediate insights into the process improvements and cost savings your organization can achieve as a result of the lessons learned in this boot camp. So definitely a good opportunity for you and your team to join. Feel free to click the link in the chat. And then again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. This webinar was recorded and will also be available on our website at Reveal Value under the Insights tab for your review at a later time. You will also find all of our previously recorded webinars, as well as other informative content areas, white papers, success stories, and other helpful tips and tools that we offer. And then our next webinar is going to take place August 18th, and Agile Supply Chain can help increase operational excellence. And this is going to be presented by David Carroll. So we'll make sure to get you that information out well in advance and hope to see you next time. And everyone, thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you so much, y'all. Thank you.